everyone. Welcome to a new session of Ashram Talks. Welcome, Simon. It's so nice to have you here again.
Very happy to be here with you.
So today we're talking about we're going to continue with chapter 4, right? And our topic is called "How to Make Ordinary Life Feel Sacred Again." And as I was telling you before we just got started, it made me remember when I first came in contact with the spiritual community of the Vaishnava tradition. And I think it wasn't only me, but I've heard this from other spiritual practitioners or friends. When they first came in contact with this, like we have been suffering so much in this world, and we were so used to that when we joined this community, it was like it made us feel so happy and we found great relief from the world. But once we started to embrace it and we started to, getting to know the rules and trying to practice by the rules and doing this every day, it's like this enthusiasm uh, progressively starts to fade away, and it just becomes another routine, something that you
Right.
just do because you have to do it or because you're used to do it
Right.
to doing it. So yes, with this I just wanted to tell you this experience before we start, because I think it might be related to our topic today. But then you can go ahead and dive into this.
Well, I'm happy you brought this up, Subhadra. It's directly related to what we'll be talking about today.
I'm
We'll be
glad.
looking at that. It's something that happens, of course, in nearly any situation in life. Something may seem, especially if it is unfamiliar territory at first, it's all very exciting, everything is new. And after a while, it begins to that initial excitement that we had can begin to fade, and something can become routine, and rather than being something that really inspires us, we feel inspired about, it can become something of a challenge or a routine. We'll be speaking about this, yes, definitely.
But just before you start, just came to my mind. It's like a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer right now. But um, so does it mean that spiritual life is nothing special? Like when it becomes just a part of our life and it starts to feel like a routine, does it mean that it really doesn't work as it should work?
Right.
So with
Good.
this, I'll leave it to you.
Good question. These are the questions that Krishna addresses and answers in the Bhagavad Gita. So, yes, most of us, we are busy almost constantly. So, even beyond a spiritual practice, we find ourselves busy with work, replying to messages, cooking, studying, exercise, our personal spiritual practice or yoga practice. But yet, despite all this activity, life can begin to feel strangely mechanical. And this is what we were speaking about, Subhadra. We move from one obligation to another without fully inhabiting what we're doing. And days begin to blur together. Even meaningful things like a spiritual practice can start to feel automatic. So the Bhagavad Gita offers a radically different way of understanding human action. What if ordinary actions did not have to remain ordinary? And what if daily life itself can become sacred? What if the problem is not merely what we're doing, but how we're relating to what we're doing? And this is what we'll address today, including within the kind of domain of our spiritual practice. So I'll begin with our Mangalacharana, auspicious invocation, which is a tradition in before studying a sacred text like the Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So with that auspicious invocation, let's go straight to verse 25 of chapter 4, which is one of two verses that we're exploring today. So, Daivam evapare yagyam yoginaha paryupasate brahmagnavapare yagyam yagye naivo pajuvati. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them. And some offer sacrifices in the fire of the supreme Brahman. Okay, interesting. Very interesting verse. These two verses we're looking at are a little bit difficult, but they contain a lot of wisdom. So here Krishna's saying that some yogis, some practitioners of yoga, they worship the gods. These are through traditional Vedic rituals or sacrifices that are performed for various deities known as devas. So like Indra, Agni, the god of fire, Soma, Varuna, Vayu, Surya or Savitri, the god of the sun, Rudra. And then Krishna says, others, they offer sacrifice into the fire of Brahman. So now for the Vaishnava Vedanta traditions, this refers to Krishna. And Krishna later will state in the Gita, in chapter 14, he will state, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the foundation or basis of Brahman. So it's the underlying reality of all things. And so here some, rather than performing the traditional Vedic rituals, they will offer everything into the fire of Brahman. In other words, they will make an offering to the source and the foundation of all things. In other words, to the soul of the universe, the soul of all souls, present in the hearts of each of us, and present within these various deities like Indra, Agni, Soma that are mentioned in the Vedic texts. So let's move on to the next verse. These two verses are connected to each other. Shrotrādinindriyānyanye sangyamagnishu juvati shabdādin vishayānanya indriyagnishu juvati. Some of them sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of the controlled mind. And others sacrifice the objects of the senses, such as sound, in the fire of sacrifice. So here Krishna is describing different kinds of spiritual practitioners and disciplines. And he's using the language evokes the Vedic yagya, or the Vedic sacrifice, Vedic ritual. Now, Krishna says some practitioners, they sacrifice the senses into disciplined self-control. And others, another category, they sacrifice the very objects of the senses like sound, form, touch, taste, smell. So you might be left wondering. Most readers of the Gita, they become a little baffled reading these two verses and wonder what it means. Krishna is in effect saying that some offer the senses, beginning with hearing, into the fires of restraint, while others offer the objects of the senses, beginning with sound, into the fires of the senses. So what Krishna is explaining here is two different ways of approaching the Vedic rituals. And Krishna's Krishna is so all of this occurs in a larger section of the Gita about yajna, sacrifice or sacred offering. And Krishna is expanding here the meaning of sacrifice. Sacrifice is no longer merely ritual performed in a temple. It's no longer ritual performed with clarified butter or ghee that's poured into a physical fire. It's no longer an occasional religious ceremony. Instead, life itself can become a sacrificial rite. Action itself can become an offering. And in explaining this, Krishna is making a distinction between two groups in this verse. One group emphasizes restraint and withdrawal, complete restraint and withdrawal. And another emphasizes disciplined engagement without attachment. So let's have a look at that. So one category, their practice is in complete restraint. So silence, fasting, celibacy, avoiding distractions, limiting entertainment. And then you have a second category. They act differently. What they do is you can call it transforming engagement. So they use the senses, but consciously and spiritually rather than compulsively. So examples would be honoring sanctified food, mindful and disciplined participation in life, listening to music, but not just anything, the kind of music that inspires us and that brings out the best in us, and so on. So the deeper point Krishna is making here is that spirituality is not merely about what we do externally. I mean, it's related to that also. I don't want to discount that entirely. But really, it's about transforming our relationship with desire, attention, and sensory experience itself. When we do that, what we do is no longer mechanical. When we engage in yajna, or we make what we do a sacred offering, it's no longer mechanical, but what we do is imbued with deep meaning. So let's unpack that a little bit, because this is it's fascinating. In modern life, our modern life often fragments our attention. So we do things whilst we're distracted, anxious, multitasking, emotionally absent, and we're rushing from one thing to the next thing. And the results, well, we might take a meal, but our meals are unconscious. They're done unconsciously. Conversations are half present. Work becomes draining. Entertainment becomes compulsive. And even our yoga or spiritual practice can become mechanical. So we're physically present, but psychologically elsewhere. And that creates a subtle sense of emptiness because consciousness is disconnected from our actions. So I want to share a reflection exercises for those of you who are watching and want to connect this with your own life. So this reflection exercise is about how much of our day are we actually present for. So I'm inviting listeners, viewers to reflect. Today, how many of the activities did I perform mechanically? How often was my mind somewhere else whilst my body continued acting? How often did I check my phone automatically, eat without awareness, listen without fully listening, move through routines unconsciously? And then the second part is ask yourself, what would it mean to become more inwardly present within ordinary life? What would that mean? So this is what Krishna is driving at here. And in doing that, Krishna radically expands the idea of the Vedic sacrifice, the Vedic ritual. So traditionally, sacrifice, yajna, involves a sacred fire, offerings, ritual precision, and transformation through offering. So here Krishna internalizes this symbolism. The fire becomes discipline, awareness, devotion, wisdom, sacred intention. And the offering becomes, what are we offering? Attention. We're offering our action, our desire, our speech, even the ego itself. So this is revolutionary. I have mentioned previously in other episodes that the Bhagavad Gita is quite it's a revolutionary text. It upends previous teachings in the sense that it looks at previous ways of practice and very much focuses not on the external form as much as the intent, the way that we approach what we do. So Krishna is basically telling Arjuna, on this battlefield of Kurukshetra, practice yajna. So this is quite revolutionary. So the Gita is suggesting here that everything we do can become sacred when it is conscious offering. Cooking can become an offering. Listening can become an offering. Studying can become yajna, an offering. Our work as well. What to say of our spiritual practice. The outward action remains the same, but inwardly everything changes. So the key shift is that sacrifice, yajna, is no longer merely something that we occasionally perform. Or to put it in language that is more accessible perhaps, our yoga practice or our spiritual practice is no longer something that we merely occasionally perform, maybe in the morning or at the weekend, but it becomes a way of inhabiting action itself. So I want to share with you something that that's part of my own daily practice. By daily, I mean it's something that, so not just at one particular moment in the morning, but really whenever I feel, often, throughout the day, whenever I can remember to do this and to focus my attention in this way, I visualize a sacred fire within my heart. And whatever I'm doing, whether it's working, speaking, cooking, studying, I mentally place that into that fire as an offering to Krishna, the soul of the universe. The action becomes like ghee that's poured into the sacred flame. So the symbolism of fire is something that transforms what is offered into another state. And it purifies, gives light, consumes selfishness, turns matter into energy and fragrance. And what this does, so what yajna, or making what we do an offering, what it does mentally, when action is mentally offered into a sacred fire, the action is no longer psychologically focused on or structured around the idea of what do I get from this? How am I perceived? Will this increase my status? Will this satisfy my ego? Instead, as I mentioned, it becomes an offering, an expression of devotion, an act of alignment with something higher than oneself. So, what we offer into that sacred fire, when ghee is poured into a fire, it isn't preserved, it's given up, it's transformed. And in the same way, sacred action can involve offering our ego, our possessiveness, our vanity, our impatience, our craving for recognition, that can be offered into the sacred fire. One might even mentally offer anger, anxiety, compulsive desires, wounded pride into this fire. And the fire becomes a symbol of spiritual transformation. So this also helps explain, those of you who will be continuing to join or continuing to watch these episodes of Ashram Talks, You'll see later in the Gita, Krishna will explain that restraint, sensory discipline, study, breath control, charity, even knowledge itself are forms of sacrifice. So when you come to that section, you can relate it to this point of the Gita in chapter 4. So let's maybe I'll share a practical exercise, another practical exercise you can try. These seem very simple, but they are very effective, and they can reorient the way that we approach our life, the way that we approach action. So I'm inviting any of you listening or watching to try this for one day. So before you begin any activity, any important activity, pause briefly, take a conscious breath, and inwardly say, may this be an offering. And so may this be an offering. And really feel that. So don't just say it mentally, but feel it from the core of your heart, that you're making what you're doing. And it can even be a very simple thing. It can be a meal that you're cooking. It can be studying, cleaning, driving. And then begin the activity, but with greater presence. So I encourage listeners, viewers, to then observe, having approached that particular activity in that way, as making it an offering, does the activity feel different? Does attention deepen? Does irritation lessen? Does the action feel more meaningful and less mechanical? So in our spiritual practice, or yoga practice, spiritual practice, when things become mechanical, it is because we've moved away from giving what we're doing the attention it deserves and making it yajna, making it a sacred offering. And conversely, even simple things that one might not class as spiritual become spiritual and have that same force and that same energy when we make them an offering into the sacred fire. So one thing that's very important is that spirituality or sacredness it no longer becomes something that's found in rare experiences. So we might think that our spirituality or our practice exists only in the temple or in retreats or on the yoga mat or in ceremonies or in mystical moments. But here the Gita is teaching something very different. The Gita repeatedly redirects attention towards the sacred. The difference between sacred and mechanical living often lies in awareness, in intentionality, in relationship, in inward orientation, especially by making what we do an offering to the divine. So two people can perform the same action, one mechanically, one lovingly, one resentfully, and one devotionally. Outwardly identical, but there's something very different. Inwardly, they're completely different. So, why this change? So, I want to say just a few words about how this shifts human experience. So when our life becomes an offering, then what happens is that ordinary moments, they gain great depth. And attention becomes steadier. And what you'll also notice is anxiety about outcomes will tend to lessen because the ego loosens. And by the ego, I mean the illusory ego, the character that we believe we are in our small human story. That narrative just loosens, and gratitude increases, and meaning becomes more continuous rather than occasional. In that it's not that we find only a few things to be meaningful in what we do throughout the day, or we find meaning only once or twice in the course of the day, and the rest of the day just seems meaningless and mechanical. But rather, meaning becomes continuous. And life, so in other words, life no longer feels divided into spiritual moments and ordinary moments. Now, this I feel is very important, and I want to especially underscore this for those who are practicing within a particular spiritual tradition, maybe a Vedantic or Bhakti tradition. I often encounter practitioners whose life is basically divided. Their person and their time is divided. They live one particular, they have like one, sometimes it even comes across as a persona for their spiritual life and a persona for their, what I'll call regular life. Now, Krishna's teaching here an undivided practice where your regular life becomes fully integrated into your spiritual practice. All of life becomes spiritually connected. And also this approach where we make what we do a sacred offering, yajna, instead of constantly asking, what can I get from this? One gradually begins to ask, what can I give through this? So it's a change of motivation. And that shift alone radically transforms the emotional texture of life. So I will leave you with one other practical exercise. Maybe choose one daily activity for this week. And I don't know what that would be for you. Maybe commuting, washing dishes. Maybe pick the activity that you consider to be the one that, because there are certain things that we do that tend to be more mechanical. So which parts of your life currently feel the most mechanical? And maybe pick something from there. So as I said, it might be commuting, washing dishes, exercising, beginning work, and then perform it slowly. Oh, going back to what you said, Subhadra, it might be at this stage in your practice, your morning spiritual practice, that might be something that has become very mechanical. We all go through different phases in our journey. So pick one activity, and for this week, focus on that particular activity, performing it slowly, consciously, without multitasking, and importantly, as an intentional offering. And then perhaps even visualize placing the action into the sacred inner fire. And reflect afterwards. Did the activity feel different? Did time feel different? Because there will be, when we enter into the sacred, our experience of time also shifts. Did awareness deepen? Did the activity become calmer or richer? So maybe try that and see for yourself how. One thing I love about the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is these are things they don't require, this is directly experiential. These are teachings that we can apply directly in our life, and we can test them. And we can see how they relate to our everyday life. And whether we are experiencing transformation and improvement in our life or not. That always needs to be something that we consider. I would venture to say that if these teachings are not radically shifting the way that we live, then either we're not understanding what Krishna is saying, and we're not applying it, actually doing the work of applying it in our life. So, closing reflection as our time is up. A closing reflection. Okay. I think for a closing reflection, I would say perhaps one of the greatest losses in contemporary life, modern life, is not just stress or busyness, but it is the loss of sacred perception. Inability to feel depth, meaning, and presence within ordinary existence. And that may even extend to our spiritual practice at times. The Bhagavad Gita offers a profound possibility that life itself can become an offering. Attention can become worship. And even ordinary actions can become spiritually transformative if they are performed consciously and devotionally. So sacredness, Krishna's teaching, is not something distant. It's not as far away as we imagine. It begins in the way that we perform the next action before us. And in that way, our whole life, every part of our life, can become sacred by making it an act of yajna, what in the ancient Vedic texts is known as yajna, or sacrifice. And by sacrifice, there's a very particular meaning there. So it is Krishna's taking, as discussed, Krishna's taking the imagery of the Vedic sacrifice, the Vedic fire rituals, and internalizing that, meaning that that's something that doesn't just apply as a ritual that's undertaken with ghee, clarified butter, and with a fire pit and so on, but it's something that we can bring into action with everything that we do, the way that we speak, the way that we think, the way that we act and approach life. That can be an act of yajna, an act of sacred offering.
Thank you so much, Simon, for this enlightening session. Before we get into a short discussion, I'd like to go through our audience's comments, starting with Colleen. So um, she's referring to this symbolism of the yajna as a fire in the heart.
Right.
And I agree with her. I think these comparisons are very useful to connect with the emotion and the purpose of the activity.
That's right. Yes. Hi, I want to say, I want to say, hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for joining us. I always look forward to these sessions also because I know you'll be there, Colleen.
That's so sweet. Yes, Colleen is always supporting us. She's always here with us. So also Sienna says, love that meaning can be continuous, not occasional. And it's true that often practitioners can often live a divided life. It has been very helpful. And
And I want to add something to what Sienna has so helpfully said there, which is that leading a divided life is quite a painful thing. There becomes one part of our life that we will feel that there's just a division that runs through our life where, and we find it difficult to relate one side of our life with the other. So even our friends might be divided into two groups, and there's little crossover between them. And when we try to do some crossover, it often feels a little bit forced and we're hesitant. So that can be quite a painful thing. I would say that a practitioner will struggle to live in that way. And they usually end up, in my experience, either falling on one side or the other. They either give up their spiritual practice or they find it difficult to relate to the world and they begin to retreat from the world. So Krishna's teaching something that is quite radical but very important. It's the integration of both sides, so that our whole field of action becomes a sacred offering. And we don't feel anymore a difference between between the part of our day or the part of our life that we consider spiritual and the part that is kind of we might consider regular, but a healthy integration where we can apply the teachings of the Gita at all times, not just occasionally.
Now that you mentioned that well, probably the person is going to either give up his spiritual practice or start a retreat from the world. I was thinking some people find it hard to find good association, or maybe it's the city they live in. There are not enough people who are interested in spiritual practice, so they only have the chance to get in touch with them in online sessions,
Right.
maybe Zoom, or maybe like this. They just get the chance to watch um, discussions about spiritual life, but they don't actually get to relate. The most of their times they're spending their time with other people, so of course it's like they don't have another choice. So what could they do in that case?
Right. The sacred bhakti texts, in particular, but you see that also in other traditions as well, place a lot of emphasis on the quality of the company that we keep. So that in itself is a whole topic, and Krishna will discuss that in the Gita too. So we'll come to sections on that. We are inevitably affected by our environment. If we're in a stressful workplace, we will feel stressful. If we're in a toxic workplace, it'll affect us. If we're with inspired people who bring out the best in us and who inspire us, we will benefit from that. And so it states in one bhakti text that consciousness is like a clear crystal. If you place a clear crystal against something red, it'll shine red. If you place it against something that is blue, it'll shine blue. So we absorb the qualities of our environment, and especially those we keep, our intimate friends in particular. So one important principle of yoga is to respect everyone, but to choose our company wisely. And it may be that we might be lucky to have practitioners who are close to us, and we can have friendships with them directly. And that can be deeply fulfilling and can help us on our spiritual path. In some cases, our friendships in that way might be online to some extent with fellow practitioners. At the same time, there's so many people who are inspiring around us who even may not appear to formally be practicing, but they will be embodying certain qualities that maybe we are still struggling with, and we can benefit greatly from them, and they can be a source of inspiration. So there are teachings all around us, but I want to emphasize that point, though, which we'll come to later in the Gita, that it is helpful to avoid toxic environments, people who are just in a different place in their journey, and we could feel, we inevitably can feel dragged down. And I'm thinking of friends who have come to me and asked me in the past to help them with particular addictions that they've had, such as addiction to various drugs and so on. The first step is there's certain friendships you may have to break. Otherwise it becomes impossible. One always will revert to to deeply ingrained habits or addictions that we have in our life. But there are also so many inspiring people around us. And one thing the teachings of Krishna's teachings and teachings from the rishis of ancient India, they explain that when we have a desire, a sincere desire to make progress on the journey of the soul, let me call it the journey of the soul, then the right people will come into our life. Krishna will send the right people in our life. Guides, friends, people who inspire us, people we can also share with and maybe help, and who can help us. That will happen naturally.
That's such an important point, and I think it's like key to everything you have said. It's very interesting to note that, as you mentioned, we might be doing some kind of rituals which are part of our tradition,
Right,
but our spiritual masters, our guides, have been always making this emphasis on your mind has to be present at that moment, and also your heart, your emotions have to be favorable at that moment, because everything is moved by this inner desire. You can pretend you want something different, but God is in our heart, so He knows what we actually want, and most likely He's going to give us what we are hankering for
right,
within, instead of what we're pretending to wish for. Like, so we might act as we are. Yeah, I don't want this. I don't want that. In this position now, but He knows our heart. So that's why it's so important to have our mind and desires focused on what we're doing spiritually, and also in our daily activities.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love your emphasis on honesty. Honesty begins with oneself. Yeah, that is a very important aspect of our spiritual practice. And again, Krishna touches on that in later chapters also. Yeah.
I had one more question, Simon, to maybe to finish,
Okay.
and it's related to this. So, is it possible to derive some benefit from spiritual practice, even though if we don't have the proper consciousness? Because I've heard so many times that, taking the example of chanting mantras,
Right.
specifically Sanskrit mantras, some people say that this sound itself has special potency. So it doesn't matter if you're understanding or not, you're gonna get the effect, because it's the Sanskrit language is just like that. But I've also heard that if you pronounce this mantra, if you don't feel it, if you don't know what it is, and if you don't have the proper consciousness, it's not gonna have any effect. And I've also heard, and this is like, I don't agree with this, but I've also heard it, and some people actually like have this way of thinking. I don't know what your opinion is, but you can make any phrase into a mantra. Actually, I participated in a yoga teacher, um, like training. It was a
Right.
teacher training, and we had some. We had to study some philosophy. So this teacher who was leading the teacher training, he said that, if okay, you can have cheese sandwich as a mantra, but if within your mind and your heart you're having the correct emotion, it will work. And I was not sure about this, but I was wondering this. Yes, can we derive some benefit even if we don't have the proper consciousness, or is it mandatory?
The word mantra is used in different ways. So it's a little bit like how the word guru has made its way into the English dictionary. And a guru, if you're speaking in if you're reading about a guru in the Financial Times, it's referring to someone who's expert in economics and finance. And so mantra also has made its way into the English language, and it has a slightly different idea to how the word is used, how the term is used in texts, bhakti texts, or various texts from India. So a mantra can be just something that one repeats to the English meaning of dictionary kind of idea as it's often used in English, is that a mantra is something that you simply repeat to yourselves again and again. So, for example, if I keep on saying to myself, I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I have to achieve this, or I have to get this to be fulfilled. I'm not enough. And there's certain patterns of the mind. If they're repeated, they become mantras. And usually we say them with a lot of emotion, mentally. The mind is continually speaking. That self-talk can have mantras that are just repetitive statements that we feel deeply about. Now, there's great truth in that. Another mantra in that sense is I should, I must, I have to. We might approach things always saying I should, I must, I have to. Even our spiritual practice might be I should, I need to, I must, rather than I get to, I love to, I want to. And
Also,
you see,
I should have done this,
or I
but
should have done
I
this.
didn't.
That's right. That's right. And you see there's a different emotional charge to I have to, I must, and I get to. I love to, I want to. Now, having said that, the word mantra in Sanskrit and in the traditions of India, that's a very particular usage of that. And that is something that works in, it has some overlap in the way it works, but it's also different. And according to the Vaishnava traditions, a mantra, when it contains names of the soul of the universe, names of the Supreme Lord, like Vishnu, Krishna, Rama, it has particular potency. And maybe one way to describe it is that there are certain points of connection between this world and the divine. Certain points of connection between the mundane and the divine, the ordinary and the extraordinary. And these are kind of, you can think of them as liminal points, thresholds, or windows, connections. And they include sacred places like Navadvip, Sri Vrindavan, and so on. They include also particular days, like the day of Krishna Janmashtami, Ekadashi, and so on. They include also names of the divine. And those are powerful connections. They're like doorways that we can enter into. But then, so just uttering those names will have, in terms of our spiritual journey, will have incredible impact. And various teachers in our lineages have explained that. But at the same time, if one really wants to enter deeply, there are certain requirements, meaning to say that one approaches the mantra in a particular way. So your question is very interesting because we just finished a whole course on Sri Shikshashtakam, the 8 verses of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the 3rd verse and the 4th verse offer the qualifications of one who can enter into the mantra, into the names of Krishna. And so the 3rd verse is Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. And we don't have time to go into this, but there is I believe that Raghunath Kapo, from who does Wisdom of the Sages, he's coming out with a book that explains what he calls the 6 pillars of bhakti, and they are 6 very important attitudes and approaches to life that they form the beginning of our practice. And I'll list them here, and we'll stop here because we can't continue for too long. But the first one is, I do not criticize. The second is, I'm tolerant. The third is, I take no offense. That's so important. Sometimes even those of us who are trying to on a spiritual path, we may have grievances with others that go back 10 years. I've said 10 years, 10 lifetimes. We're holding on to all of those
Yeah.
grievances. We take offense so easily. So the third is, I take no offense. The first one, I do not criticize. How important is that? I mean, we have those who are watching who are bhakti practitioners. You may have seen that we have a rosary that we hold within a bag. A bag, and our index finger, stays outside of the bag. That finger represents the finger of anger and criticism. So we keep that out of our practice, but rather see the good in the good qualities of others. My teacher would explain that when we look at negative qualities in others, we build a bridge from our heart to their heart. And all of those qualities, real or imagined, go on that bridge, cross that bridge, and enter our own heart. So those are 3. And then, the fourth is, I see the good in others and I let them know it. And the last one, the 6th one, is, I am grateful and keep a tally of my blessings. There's one text by Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a mystic, devotional mystic in our lineage. He says gratitude is the elixir of bhakti. The elixir of devotion is gratitude. Without gratitude, our practice can't flourish. It's impossible. So these are aspects, dimensions contained in the 3rd verse of a 8-verse prayer. Beautiful set of verses composed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in our own lineage, our own tradition. And the next one is also very important, Nadhanam, Najanam, Nasundarim. And they show us the doorway into sacred mantra practice. Any temple, any building, you need to find the doorway to be able to enter it. So otherwise, we will recite these sacred prayers, these sacred mantras, and we will get benefit from it for sure. But we won't ever really be able to enter into the temple and truly experience what we won't attain. To put it another way, we won't attain mantra siddhi. Mantra siddhi means perfection in the mantra. There'll be a huge realm that is closed off to us.
Sienna is asking if you have those notes on the Sixastakam to share with the audience, or maybe with her. It would be interesting.
Let me see what I can put together, and maybe another time. Oh, I have
Oh,
not again. I apologize to viewers. This has happened occasionally.
that's okay, no problem.
Camera.
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you
There
so
we go.
much, Simon. I think we can see that there is a lot of work to do, but fortunately, our teachers have also taught us that we don't have to rush.
Right.
We
Yes.
have to be patient and consistent. Go
Yeah.
step by step, non-stop, but you don't have to be the first. You just have to be
Yes.
there. Keep on.
That's right. And to finish with what you emphasized, honesty, a natural approach that's honest with who we are and where we are, is everything. There's one teacher who is famous throughout the world in our own lineage, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He is often focused on that. He calls that honesty sincerity.
Thank you again, Simon. And I think I'm going to take this last exercise you left us with. Like we have homework until the next time we can see each other.
Right? I'll practice.
Because
I will
yeah,
do it as
sometimes I
well.
think
Let's both do it.
yes, sometimes I think okay, tomorrow I won't forget to offer my job before I start, but I actually forget. So I usually do it before going to sleep. There's actually a prayer. I remember this prayer from the time I was in the temple, and it after you serve the deity, you can sing this prayer. It says like, because I always forget to do it before the activity, I take this moment like to offer all my activities done with my body, with words, with my thoughts, with my senses and my intelligence. I offer them to your lotus feet. So it's a way to also do it. But I
That's
want
so
to do
beautiful.
it before starting, but I always forget.
That's very beautiful. That prayer that you just shared.
Well, I don't know if you'd like to say anything to say goodbye to our audience.
I do want to say that for family reasons, I will be away for some time, some weeks, and yeah, I just wanted to let viewers know that. But I am looking forward to returning, and I love ashram talks and this way of deepening our own understanding and practice of the teachings of the Gita. It's just so valuable for my own spiritual development and practice, and I value it greatly.
I'm sure our audience also loves hearing from you. I personally do, from you and from all our speakers. And I'm gonna be praying for your return. I hope
Oh,
you
thank
come
you.
back soon. And yes, I hope you have a also um, a blessed time during this period you're gonna be away. So until a next session, thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you, Subhadra.
Hope to see you soon. And to everyone who joined today or everyone who are listening, thanks so much for following us from Talks. I would like to remind you our class schedule is Monday at 7:30 p.m. EST and Thursdays at 8 a.m. EST. And also that we have a new WhatsApp community and would like you to join. You can find the link in our biography. Through this community, you can get closer to the speakers who are going to be there and who, with other persons who follow Ashram Talks and may have questions you might be related to. And what the purpose of all of this is to get closer to you and build a really nice community and support each other towards spiritual improvement and, stand by each other while walking through this path. So, thank you so much again for being here and see you everybody on our next session. And goodbye.